Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Lee and I'm a Vietnamese living in New Zealand. In today's videos, I'm gonna do something different to my normal hiking videos. I'm gonna talk about Vietnam. As you know, I'm a Vietnamese and after spending almost half of my life in New Zealand, now when I go back to Vietnam and visit, I am able to see Vietnam as from an eye of a visitor. And because of that, there are certain things that um, a visitor might find a little bit annoying or, not used to. And I think it might be useful for somebody to tell you these things to expect. Let's not muck around and let's get into it. The first thing and the biggest thing on my list, especially for a girl, is bring toilet paper in your bag. So there are a couple of things about toilet. First of all, not a lot of public toilets is available everywhere. And if you do find one, they usually don't provide toilet paper. In Vietnam, some places they do just use, they have like a hose next to your toilet, and people people actually wash their bottom with the hose instead of using toilet paper. And so depends on where you go, it might not be a bad idea to have a toilet roll available in your bag. Second point is that what clothes to pack. So as you might know already, that Vietnam is a tropical country, it's very close to the equator, so it's really humid, it's really hot almost all year round. If you go to the northern part of the country in the winter time, which is around December, January, February, it can be quite cold, but in the south it's still quite warm. So the southern part of Vietnam never gets below 19 degrees, I don't think. On a very rare case, it might get to 19 degrees and people would think that it's freezing. But other than that, the average temperature all year round is around 30 plus. So just bring lots of lots of light clothes, clothes that you can easily sweat in, and quick dry clothes would be a good idea. Shorts, sandals. But I mean, if you happen to find that you needed some other piece of clothing, I'm sure that you can find something in Vietnam. It's for a pretty cheap price anyway, so it's not a big deal if you haven't packed properly. But a couple of things to keep in mind. The sizes might be different, and secondly, you might have to hackle with the locals on the price of the clothes, which I'm gonna talk a little bit later on the hackling part. Okay, so the next point is that just general knowledge of taking good care of your belongings, because like as anywhere else in the world, pickpocketing is a real problem in Vietnam. And if you're walking around the street with 100 millions of people, you might want to take extra care of your clothes, because you don't know when you're going to be pickpocketed. And all the valuable, of course, just put it away, out of sight, out of mind. And the next one is that people drive or ride on the right hand side of the road. So this is very confusing for people who come from New Zealand or any countries that you're driving on the left hand side, because when you cross the street you need to look left first and then look right, because people will be coming from the left and then from the right. I mean, I get caught out quite a few times as well when I'm crossing the street in Vietnam. I am so used to looking to the right first in New Zealand, and then when I go to Vietnam, I just have to actively thinking about it when I cross the street. Oh, and speaking of traffic, you might have seen those videos with like crazy traffic of motorcycles everywhere on the street. It's real. It's a reality in Vietnam. And I mean, also like the pedestrian crossing, Don't expect people to stop for you at the pedestrian crossing. Traffic never stops in Vietnam, unless it's red light and there's a policeman on the street. I mean, it's not that we don't follow the rules or anything, but the pedestrian crossing doesn't work quite the same way as some other country, especially in New Zealand. You do stop for pedestrian, but in Vietnam, no, people do not stop for pedestrian. So how do you cross the road in Vietnam? That brings me to the next point. So this is what you have to do when you need to cross the street in Vietnam. First of all, you look left, okay? So you look left directly at the traffic coming at you, and then you make eye contact with these motorcyclists that are coming towards you, and then you step into the street while making eye contact with those cyclists or cars and stuff. So, and then you start crossing the street at a steady pace. And the keywords here is steady pace. Okay, so by crossing the street at a steady pace, it makes you predictable and it make it easy for people to flow around you. So that's the most bizarre thing when you're crossing the street in Vietnam. The traffic doesn't stop; it just flows around you, and people can carry on with their life, and you can carry on with your life without any accident. And then, so as you pass the halfway point of the street now the traffic is going to come from the right. So you're going to have to look right, again, make eye contact with these cyclists, or, make sure that they saw you, and then you continue with that steady pace across the street. And then the next thing you know, you'll be on the pavement of the other side. And also, sometimes there are cyclists on the pavement, so just watch out for the traffic everywhere, especially at the big city. It might sound scary and intimidating crossing the street in Vietnam, especially in Ho Chi Minh City when, you have hundreds and thousands of cars and cyclists just everywhere on the street. But once you get a hang of it, you might enjoy it, and it's all part of the experience. Okay, let's move on from the street and let's go into the shopping. So I mentioned before, when you go and buy things in Vietnam, anything from clothing or furniture or anything, even for Vietnamese, you might have to hackle a little bit, but especially for tourists, you do have to hackle quite a bit because you are most likely to go buying things from a touristy place, and that means that people can push the price up quite high. So for myself, I think a good starting point is probably starting about half of the price that they told you, and then start working your way up from there. And then eventually, hopefully you will find like a price where both are happy. And I mean, if they're not prepared to negotiate, you can always walk to the next shop, and then as soon as you do that, they might just be like changing their mind and like, hey, come back, okay, let's work this out and things. So I think that's one of the ways you can hackle, because if you just pay what they asked you to, you might end up paying a lot more than what it's actually worth. But I mean, if money isn't a problem for you, and if you think it was worth the price, then, just pay for it and save yourself a hassle of heckling. But if you want to try the experience of heckling, go for gold. Okay, and one of the things that you have to do in Vietnam is to try the food. One of the things I miss the most living in New Zealand is having Vietnamese food. I mean, yes, in New Zealand you are spoiled with choices of food all around the world, but home food is always the best. And Vietnam is like a food heaven place. And yeah, so food in Vietnam are quite cheap, and you can just walk down the street and then you will see street vendors everywhere. And of course you can't help yourself but try one of these things, but because they are street vendors, I don't think there's a lot of hygiene standards that being regulated amongst these street vendors. So I guess one of the good things that you could prepare yourself for is bring some sort of tablets or some sort of medication that would help with the stomach or the digestion. I'm not quite sure what these medications are called, but I'm sure if you go to your pharmacy before leaving the country, and they would have a few good recommendations for you. Okay, last point, because it's getting really dark, and I also run out of things to say. So please boil the water before you drink. In New Zealand and some other countries, you can just drink water straight out of the tap because it's safe to do so, but in Vietnam there's no filtering system that does that at the moment. So the safest way of drinking water is boil the water before you drink, unless you want to buy water every day and contribute to the plastic waste, single-use plastic waste, then I'm not encouraging that. So you can always boil the water. It's easy enough to do. There's a jug in your hotel or hostel room. So please boil the water, otherwise you might end up with a really sore stomach. And that is all for me today. Thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoy this video, and if you have any other experience or any tip of traveling in Vietnam, please let me know in the comment below, or I'm also welcoming the comments that could help me improve on my videos as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please subscribe and keep an eye out for more videos like this. Thank you. See you next time.